What's up?
What's going on,
How's it
Greg?
going?
Look at that studio, man. Once upon a time in Hollywood. I like it.
I know I had to adjust it a little bit. I got that. I don't know if you see your book
Oh,
back there.
I thought that looked familiar.
Yeah. You only worked on it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to get the setup, and Carson has his setup too. He's not at home right now. He's up in college, so
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. He's playing basketball, and actually he's coaching right now too, so
Coaching
um
basketball.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, I'm up at a college in actually in Minnesota. So, but
I love
Ryan.
basketball. I used to coach a seventh grade team.
Oh, really?
Yep. It
How was that?
was good. We went 6-0. So,
Nice.
but they all tried to
that's
sub
awesome.
in, so I kept having to sit on the sideline and try to oh, like, can I go in now? Can I go in now? I was like, no, guys.
So
That's
this
funny.
was like a middle school team then, seventh grade?
Yeah. Yeah, it was seventh grade.
Awesome. Was it in California?
Oh yeah, LA.
LA? That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, Carson and I wanted to talk basketball with you because
Yeah, that's how Ryan and
um
I met initially. We
yeah.
played basketball for a long time together. Ryan knows a thing or two with me too. I tried to sub myself in a couple times in high school. That doesn't go as well.
What position did you play?
I was a shooting guard, and Ryan was the point guard, so we were kind of
Oh,
a little tandem.
that's fun. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I'm mainly a shooter. So
Yep.
You know,
All shoot, no defense.
next time we're all in the same area, we'll have to go play some pickup because I guarantee you we will not lose. It'll be
Yeah.
fun.
It's a couple
Yeah.
of shooters.
That'll be fun. Well, great. Are you in Colorado still? I'm assuming
Yeah.
from last night.
yeah, yeah, I'm still
How'd
here.
it go?
It was good. Yeah, I did Littleton, Port Collins, back to back, and it was
Wow.
great. I'd been to the Draft House in quite a few years up there, and
Yeah.
Littleton was a really good spot. So, and then the Lyric in Port Collins
Yeah.
was a lot of fun. I always liked that place. So, yeah, it was good.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Draft House is Carson and I's favorite theater by far. We
It is.
love that. And then the Lyric, I have a grudge against the Lyric because I tried to work for them and then they denied my application. So I have a little bit of a grudge, but I love their theater.
Maybe they just didn't see the application.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I'm happy you've had a good time in Fort Collins. It's a great city, and you've been back quite a few times.
The second time since I was here in September when I met you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that was a great time too, because that was with the Horsetooth International Film Festival. How has that been then, kind of being in Fort Collins? How are you liking the area and in Colorado in general?
I love Colorado. Elizabeth Hotel is great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check out Estes Park, which I went to a few years back.
Yeah.
So I love it up there. I love the nature and stuff. It's great. It's a really fun time.
Yeah, it's really nice. And I guess the preface for everyone listening and just for this episode, you and I, Greg, we met, in September. I had a film showing at the festival in Fort Collins, and then you had a screening of Miracle Valley, which we'll touch on, but I know we can't do any spoilers or anything like that, obviously. But I had such a great time meeting you and then also watching the film, and I want to get into that a little bit. But that was I felt very, very lucky and grateful to have met you because I read your book in high school, which would have been now about 5 years ago. And it was my favorite thing I read. It was just amazing. And then the movie came out and I'm like, holy shit, like this is insane. And Carson knows how much I love the book because I was reading it in class.
Yeah, and you don't read.
I literally, Greg, the only book I've ever read full is The Disaster Artist. I am not shitting you. It's literally the only book I've read. It's phenomenal. Yeah, I do not read.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Books should be entertaining and fun where you don't want to put them down. If that's not happening, why keep reading?
Right.
You know? I mean, I'm reading Old Man and the Sea, and I'm like, Jesus, I'm pushing myself through every page.
Right.
Granted, a different story and a different way of storytelling, but like a book should be enjoyable. You should feel like your friend's sitting you down and telling you a story, and you can't wait to hear the next beat. So, I'm really glad to hear that.
100%. Yeah, it's incredible, and I know we want to get into The Disaster Artist, and the book and the movie and kind of everything, and then Miracle Valley. But I think we do want to start with just you as a filmmaker, but also just growing up. We were doing some research, and one of the films that affected you growing up was Home Alone when you saw it in seventh grade. Can you talk a little bit about your love for film at an early age and maybe why that film stood out to you more than the rest?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I just loved the freedom, in that story of a kid being by himself and having to fend for himself. And the score, of course, had a magic to it. There was comedy in it. There's so much heart in that movie. Home Alone is especially as for for a family comedy. So I just remember, not really fitting in a lot of ways with your peers, and I really wanted to live in that story of Home Alone. And I thought, hey, I'm gonna write a sequel um, to the story just because I don't know, I felt compelled to do something with that feeling. And I got so into writing and storytelling that I was like, I'm going to submit this to John Hughes. I'm going to go for it. This movie's going to happen. I really believed it. It was like something that like wasn't a great student, but for some reason with this project, it was like I found myself. And so I went all out and found the production office, mailed it, and really thought it was going to happen, So and I got the letter back from John Hughes, and I was like, okay, I knew this is what I wanted to do, was to make movies. Um, and it was weird, like when I got the letter back that obviously the movie like wasn't gonna happen. When I had that realization, I didn't watch Home Alone for many, many years. Um, just because I don't know, the sequel had lived in my mind for so long. But yeah, it was sort of lit the match to take things in your own hands, tell stories, don't wait for your phone for the phone to ring, be proactive. And so, and oddly enough, so many things came from that. I ended up meeting Macaulay Culkin in 2018, being on his podcast. I ended up meeting Chris Columbus, the director, at the Independent Spirit Awards. He loved The Disaster Artist, and just so many cool little connections from that came from that whole journey. And I think sometimes it's an important lesson to have that rejection on something you really believe in early on, because if you get success or get things too easy, you don't appreciate it.
It's funny because Ryan and I were talking yesterday about how funny that is, just the full circle moment. Because you are a great podcast guest, and you were on Bunny Ears, as you're referencing, with Macaulay Culkin. And you're able to, when you go on these podcasts, or if you're going to these screenings, you do a really good job of, I guess, telling your story, because that's important to talk about your beginnings, kind of this middle ground with The Room and Tommy, and then how that's led you to now as a director and a filmmaker. Can you talk a little bit about those beginnings and kind of that origin story, meeting Tommy? I know it's difficult because you've probably told this story a million times, but for people out there that don't know, what was it like meeting Tommy? Because before you made The Room, I mean, you knew Tommy and you were friends with him for a couple of years. What was that like, and how'd you guys meet?
So it was July of 1998. I was taking an acting class in San Francisco, and I'd been studying for a couple years, taking classes, and I don't know, things just weren't really clicking. It was like I felt like I was still part of a school and didn't feel like I was getting any better. And so I was trying this kind of, underground acting class that people talked about that was a little bit more intimate. And I felt like I was getting some growth. I was going on auditions and getting close to things, and got a few commercials. And then I had several callbacks on this movie that was filming in San Francisco that I had a pretty decent part. And I didn't get it. I didn't get the part. It was like 3 callbacks. I'm like, now what am I going to do? Do I still keep taking acting classes? I want to move to LA and all these things. So, I was in class and I was sort of distracted and thinking about all this. And then up walks this guy with, long black hair. And immediately I was like, okay, this is going to be something really fascinating to watch. And watching him perform made me just laugh. And I was engaged watching, not because he was doing things right, because it was like so rivetingly wrong, and like in a way that like the teacher was compelled to yell at him and they argued. And there's something refreshing about seeing something so different in an acting class. And I immediately felt more at home with that. So I just approached him to do a scene together, and I'm like, hey, I'm kind of at rock bottom. I don't know where I'm going. I'm ready to give up. Something about this guy just seemed really entertaining and funny. Maybe I'll do a scene with him and it'll lighten the mood. And so I asked him to do a scene together, and we struck up this whole friendship. And oddly enough, like I wanted that part so bad in that movie because I thought that would be my ticket to LA. It'd be tape, it would be something. And meeting Tommy ended up being the ticket to so many different things that I could have never imagined, with that friendship. So a lot of times our eyes and our goals are fixated on something that we think we need or is right for us, but really what's right for us is right in front of us. We just don't see it. And so I sort of let go of that. I got involved with this friendship that I had with Tommy, and we became friends. We talked about all these different things we had in common. And then late one night on a road trip, he's like, what do you want to do next? And I was like, oh, I want to move to LA, but I don't know how to get there. And he's like, well, I have an apartment in Los Angeles. It's open. You can rent for $200. And I was like, everything just started clicking. Sometimes our journey is really in front of us and it's lined up, and we just need to kind of embrace it and roll with it and not fight against things.
Definitely. And I think, I wanted to come in. Carson and I were trying to figure out, how many room questions do we ask? Because we know you could probably restate things that you've said a million times, as Carson said, but we want to try to get something new out of you. And I could ask you about Tommy's personal bathroom, or, him buying, all the film gear, which I do kind of respect. I wish I could do that. But is there, a tidbit or a piece of trivia from the room that you don't think many people have heard of? I know that might be hard because you've written a book and you've talked about it a bunch, but there's something you can think of.
I think one of the biggest things is, a lot of people have seen the movie, and obviously the movie doesn't go into a lot of the details of the book, and it kind of shifts the story a little bit because you can't make a 4-hour movie. But I think one of the things for people that haven't read the book, the story in the book starts the night before we're about to film. And I wasn't even going to be Mark. And I know in the movie, it makes it seem like I wanted to be Mark. And I'm like, we're doing it together. We're making this movie. And I believed in it. But in the reality of it, I was never going to be in the film. I had read the script, and I knew like I'd been auditioning for other things. And Tommy was full on like an outsider, amateur, in that way, in my perspective at the time, because I was trying to get in the traditional way. So I wasn't going to be in the movie. And it wasn't until the night before filming, we had already cast another Mark. Like the movie was cast, it was going to be made without me. I was going to be in the background. And he just said to me, like, he's about to drop me off at my apartment right before the next day is going to start. He's like, last chance. This is your last chance. You have to be Mark. I had this beard at the time. And he's like, you look like Spartacus. You look great. You should be in it. And I just remember thinking, like, why would I be in it? Nobody's going to see it anyway. Like, who cares? It was just one of those things. It was like, but something when you like made that final push, like I kind of thought something came over me, like, should I do this? Or, I'm going to be on set all day anyway. And then he kept making these things where he's like, you don't have to take your jeans off. I'll get you a new car. And it was like, Jesus, last chance. Do I do it or not? And I sort of like won me over in that split second. And it was like a moment in time when he made that last chance, and he hadn't asked me for weeks. Like the movie was moved on. Somebody else was being Mark. It was going to happen. And so I think that's sort of like, again, that destiny moment where we're handed things, decisions to make. And do we trust our gut instinct? Do we fight against it? And I just was like, I guess I'll do it. And so many things to that point were so random, because I wouldn't have done the room if I didn't have a beard at the time. And I randomly had never had a beard again, never had a beard before. So sort of, things were just like manifesting and lined up for something to happen that needed to happen. And, all these years later, for example, at the screening last night, there's a 17-year-old girl who came to the show. She was dressed as Tommy. She knew every line. She'd been to every location. And she told me that the room has like saved her life during the pandemic. She had gone through like some tough times. And so it's just amazing what this movie has done for people. And I think the biggest thing was, the night before filming, I was like, at that point, I was never going to be in the film. And it was just like a split decision. And that's the opening chapter of the book. It's just me sort of like taking that on.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, you've got all of these crazy stories. like Ryan referenced, kind of endless stories, and the film becomes this cult phenomenon. You've got these late night screenings,
which Carson and I have been to, by the way.
right.
Yeah,
And we were a little bit later to the game, just because that was a little bit past our generation when these things got really, really hot. But nevertheless, had a great time at some of these screenings. When did the idea come? All right, I need to write about this. I need to make this into a book, because quite frankly, it's a great book, but maybe even better audio book too, because you've got kind of this counterbalance between your perspective, and then you've got a great Tommy impression as well. How did that all come about?
It was like when people started discovering the movie and showing up to screenings, and I went to a few Q&As, it was like, people don't even know that I was roommates with Tommy, that I knew him before this. They just assumed, I just showed up and was in the film. So I knew the story behind the making of the film was just as crazy as the movie itself. And I thought, if I could harness that story, my story of going to LA, meeting Tommy, all that, I thought that could be a great film. And so that's sort of the journey I set out on, was to tell a story that could then become a good film. So you take a movie that's considered like the worst movie ever, you turn that story into actually a great film. And so I took inspiration from like Ed Wood, Sunset Boulevard, Boogie Nights, and like, that's what this story could be, which was the challenge. And so it was around 2010. I started on the path of writing this book. And again, day one was the goal that it would be turned into a film, like Home Alone. Same journey, same goal. And I thought the story of the friendship was sort of the heart of it, was the anchor of what made it unique. So just approached it as something that was very sincere. It's not like a book about a bad movie. It's more a book about following your dreams and friendship. And so that's how I approached it.
I think it's interesting because you obviously have this great book, the way you approached it, and I feel like that's honored within the final film. But what was that like then when you're contacted by Seth and James, that who are fans of The Room, fans of you and Tommy, they want to make this film. What is that process like from getting your book to the screen? And with that, were you able to be on set? I'm assuming you were. But what was that like? 'Cause I know you're in the film a little bit as well. So what was that entire process
It was
like?
great. I mean, it was 3 weeks after the book came out. James Franco had never seen The Room before. He just started reading the book and was just taken in, fascinated by it, quoting Tommy already. And it was great. A lot of people talk about optioning and making stuff, and then they never do. But it was really cool that James, from day one said, I want to make this movie. He did it. Visiting the set was incredible, being there like with Bryan Cranston and Sharon Stone. And it was like really expensive therapy, getting to go to these set and watch these life scenes being created. And I just learned a ton being on the set and watching them work and shoot scenes and improv. And I worked a lot with the production designer to make it feel like it was close to what the time was like, the car I was driving, the clothes. And then had so much fun on set for that I that's why I said I want to just make movies. And that's sort of where I wrote the script to make Best Friends, because I was like, that was so inspiring and fun and such a worthy piece of your time. Like every day they'd be on set creating stuff, and I was like, I just want to continue to do that. So that's where I came up with the idea to do Best Friends, and we went out and made that year, the next year.
And so with that, I know you make Best Friends, and kind of these new projects start to come to life. One of those being you collaborate with a director that we love, Mike Flanagan. He talks about how much he loved The Disaster Artist, and you get involved with him, and you do some acting for him, along with Mike, who are some other filmmakers that you've been approached by since The Disaster Artist, and that have fueled that kind of filmmaking back into you.
Yeah, I really like Sean Baker. He's made some really fun projects. Just a guy who like really gets film and hasn't changed throughout his projects. Still the same kind of goal and stuff. So talk with him a little bit, and you know, obviously my favorite director is David Fincher. Just his films last the test of time. I mean, 15 years ago, Zodiac came out yesterday, and it's still a movie that people love and talk about and want more of. And Fight Club came out, you know, years and years ago. I think 20 years ago. And you know, people still quote it and love it, young people. So that's really the kind of films that I want to be a part of and make, is that they're not just out and then gone. They have like a lasting impact on people that want to see them again, talk about them again, speak to generations. So when you make a film, you got to think of those things and really put your heart and soul into it, and what you're trying to say and what those mean to you. So just making films like that, working with filmmakers like that, I think is really important.
I think you did exactly that when you obviously making Miracle Valley. I was able to see it back in September. Really loved it. We talked about it a little bit. For people that don't know, because I know a little bit more about how this idea came about, can you kind of detail that to people listening? How this idea for Miracle Valley, your directorial debut, came about?
Yeah, I just you know, after this whole journey with Disaster Artist and The Room and Best Friends, I thought I really want to lean into horror. I really want to do something different, and most of all, I want to have fun making a film. And
Mm,
so, you know, I sort of tackled the whole experience with the room and the book, and I was like, now I just want to sit back and make something fun. You know, I've been with audiences in the theater throwing spoons. I was like, I kind of have a feel of what they'd enjoy. And so I moved to
mm.
Arizona, rented a ranch, lived there, wrote the script, scouted, sort of lived the movie before I wrote the script and made the movie. Sort of a backwards way to do it. But you know, and I studied 70s horror. I studied like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, new stuff, Midsummer, Hereditary, and just kind of tried to take what I enjoyed about those films and turn it into something that was quick, fast, fun, wild, unpredictable. And it came together really quickly. I think having a timeline on your creativity, it was like started the whole process in May, and we had the film made by December,
Wow.
right before the pandemic hit. So, um, you know, I knew I needed to make it in that window, and it was really great to be pushed, and each day had purpose, and waking up and be like, I need to finish this scene today. I need to scout. So um, it was really fun. And then obviously the pandemic happened. We had time to edit it and, you know, refurbish a few things, and started showing it to test audiences and festivals, and people have really had a good time with it. And I think it's surprising to what they were expecting, which is good.
So not only with
Yeah.
this film, but then you touched on Best Friends a little bit. You've kind of done this cool thing that we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, in which you came out to Hollywood looking for an opportunity. And through Best Friends and now your most recent film, you've been able to kind of pay that back, and you've been able to cast kind of these first time actors and actresses. What has that been like, kind of being able to repay what you're looking for all these years later?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you just really need help as a young actor, and you want to learn, and you need opportunities. And so, you know, making these films now, I always try to seek out aspiring actors that live in random places that haven't had the chance to get out there and do stuff, and give them a chance. And it's amazing how grateful they are, how hard they work. A lot of Miracle Valley actors came from all over. You know, one of the guys who plays my friends is you know, he lives in Missoula, Montana. He
Mm.
studied acting in New York. He had moved on. You know, was married, living in Missoula, doing other things, and really like smart, talented guy. Never had got a shot, and he came in. People really dug him in the film. So I think that's a big part for me, is getting a chance to work with people that really want to do it for the right reasons.
Definitely. And I think, Greg, a big part of Miracle Valley, why I was telling Carson about it after I saw it, why I loved it so much was it felt like a love letter to horror, but also you could sense the collaboration in the piece. And even someone from Fort Collins was there at the screening who was in the film, which was also just super cool to see someone from my hometown, you know, in a film with Greg Sestero. I mean, it's incredible. Um, so I guess going off of that though, you're directing this film, and obviously there's challenges that are going to rise and deal with them. What did you learn the most directing this film, as it's your directorial debut, and were there any challenges that arose that you didn't quite expect?
I think biggest key with directing is casting. If you get somebody who's in the right part, they come in prepared, they're having fun. All you got to do is just guide them and sit back and enjoy it. Because if you're enjoying the performance, then more than likely the audience will. It's hard when you have somebody that can't quite get there, isn't quite landing what you're thinking, and you're trying all these things and it's just not, quite what you're hoping for. So really, if you cast right, I think it's a huge part of it, and just preparation and going through the motions in your mind many, many times before it's happening, but also keeping an openness for when there is something fresh and new that you're open to it. I think so. Um, Writing, being in the environment really helped me with the story before getting there. And the collaboration also was sitting down with the actors and being like, what does this say to you? How do you feel in this moment? Like, how would you like to be killed, or how would you feel your character killed somebody? And just keeping it open and fun, because horror, I feel like if you do it right, it can have an element of that. And so just making sure every actor felt comfortable and had input into how they would proceed.
So I'm glad that you're getting into horror, because horror is definitely one of my favorite genres. Along with that, though, kind of been teasing some stuff on Instagram. I've seen, I don't know, some alien stuff. What interests you next? You've tackled horror. What's next?
So now I want to get into the whole UFO abduction world. A couple of movies that have inspired me are Fire in the Sky and Ex Machina. So I started writing this script kind of during the pandemic while I was living in Arizona. I took a UFO night tour and just got really, engaged in that world. And so I'm scouting in like Texas, New Mexico, and hope to make it later this year or early next year.
That's amazing. And specific, I want to go back to Miracle Valley just because it's still in the festival circuit. When do you expect people to be able, besides going to advanced screenings, to be able to either go to the theater or be able to stream it? Do you have a date in mind?
It's supposed to be this fall, so we're figuring that out now. Still, we'll be doing some screenings on and off through them, but it'll hopefully release this fall.
This fall, gotcha. Well, one thing that I kind of want Carson to mention, we had to ask you. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but we want to talk about your love of basketball. And we mentioned that your shooter, Carson's one of the best shooters I've ever seen in my life. And I'm a point guard. Just kind of I like to dish it. He was the guy I would hit in the corner. Where did your love for basketball start? And do you have a favorite team?
Yeah, so we could be like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry.
Right.
Yeah, no, I am. So I grew up with a sport court, and we do 3-point contests. Ever since I was young, we play with my uncles, and I just always try to master the long deep shot, the corner shot. So I've been playing basketball since I was like 8 or 9, and played in CYO, and yeah, I just became obsessed with it. And then I really got into it when I moved to LA in the late 90s with the Laker teams there, and play pickup a lot. And then I just started going to the gym and taking a medicine ball and practicing my shot over and over and over. And I just became like a 3-point shooter and just would go play pickup. I played with like Ryan Phillippe and random games. And we even brought Tommy a couple times. And his defense is crazy. He will like tackle the people we're playing against. They'd be like, "Whoa, dude, whoa, chill out." And so I just Phil Jackson's one of my heroes, NBA coach.
Yeah.
Love the late '90s Bulls, and I got really into playing. Obviously, love the Warrior team. But yeah, no, I'll get out and play any chance I get. I have a basketball in my car, so any chance I can go shoot and play, it's something that I really love. And I play with my brother one-on-one for tournaments, and then we play the PS video games, do like a whole draft and all that. So yeah, basketball's been a huge part of my life for like the last 20 years.
That's great. I love that there was kind of this full circle moment, because Ryan and I, we talked about this with guests before, but that's how we met. And then in kind of this cool way, we found our love for film as well. So it's cool when we can kind of pair that all together. We like to end off every podcast. You've already done well to give advice, but I know it's different, because now you started as an actor, now you're becoming this filmmaker. Do you have any advice in particular for people that are trying to break in the industry as directors, what advice would you lend to any aspiring filmmakers out there?
I think so. We all have films that inspired us, that made us want to make movies and pursue. But really, what I've learned over the years is you really got to not try to fit in so much as like find your own voice. It's like a lot of people want to be on the project, all these projects that are playing, that are happening now, but you really want to think to the future. You want to be the creator. You don't want to just be working for the creator. And I think that comes with tapping into your own ideas, your own voice, and not being afraid to be bold. And people are gonna, a lot of times people target filmmakers that have a voice, but they also really respect them and gravitate towards them. If you look at the filmmakers of the last 20 years, their work is weird, it's wacky, and they probably weren't the cool people in their circle when that was happening, but they tapped into their voice and make films now that everybody wants to see. And I saw it early on with The Room. I mean, Tommy was like the anti-cool in all the classes. Nobody wanted to be around him. Nobody really gravitated towards him. Nobody wanted to see him perform. And I saw something there that was really unique, and he kept pushing that. And now The Room is something 20 years later that young people love, people talk about. And it's funny because you can't really recreate The Room. It was something that was authentic to who he was then. So really just being authentic to who you are, and getting out there, not being afraid to make your own content and share your own voice and just be original. I mean, I think we need a lot more of that.
That's amazing advice. And I know Carson, we want to make sure that you're able to kind of let people know where you're going to be next. We know you're in the great city of Fort Collins right now, but where are you going to be next? Where are you going to be showing Miracle Valley, room screenings? Where's your next stop?
So I go to Detroit next, and then I'm going to Iceland for the Frostbiter Film Festival there. It's a horror festival, which is really cool.
Wow.
And then, I usually update on my Facebook page, which is like at Greg Sestero, and try to keep updated of where I'm going to. I'm hitting Alaska in March as well. So
awesome.
I will have done all 50 states at that point.
Wow.
Pretty fun. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. So I'm probably be on, traveling and touring and all that for quite a while, and getting ready to make the next film.
That's amazing. Well, Greg, we're really excited. We really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're busy. You're doing a lot of screenings, obviously, and prepping for a film. We're working on short films, so we can only imagine what you're doing for a feature. Next time you're in Colorado, let us know. We'd love to go play some pickup, get a little team formed. But again, truly great talking to you again. Really appreciate you taking the time. And enjoy the rest of your day in Fort Collins. Go get some good food.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I'll see you on the
Greg.
4th.